Welcome to It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach, providing information and support while encouraging hope and faith. I seem to be having a little challenges with our stream today, but we are going to persevere. As I said, this is It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach. You can find out more about us by logging onto our website at FaithBased.com. And today we're going to be talking about recovery. We're going to finish up our teaching on recovery, and hopefully I can get through this without us cutting off. But what I wanted to talk about recovery, as you guys who listen to us know, our focus is on individuals who are living with a severe and persistent mental illness. Okay, you can find out more about us, as I said, by logging onto our website. But let me talk about, first of all, what is a mental illness? Currently in the United States, an estimated 5 million adults, and I'm reading, as I said, from our little pamphlet that we put together. Currently in the United States, an estimated 5 million adults are living with a mental illness. Included in this number are people of all economic backgrounds, races, creeds, religions, etc. Spiritual beliefs, while spiritual beliefs, religiosity does help to provide a cushion, it doesn't exempt us from getting ill. Everyone can get ill no matter who you are, and whether that's, we're talking about mental illness or any other type of illness, it doesn't matter. Living with a mental illness, or any illness for that matter, doesn't mean that you're not trusting God. On the contrary, it takes a strong person. It's a testament to the power of God in your life when you can still continue to trust and to believe God, in the midst of what you're going through. So that's a testament. So you don't want to ever let anybody make you feel that you're less than because you have an illness. Now, having a psychiatric illness or a mental illness is challenging. Just because of the society that we live in, whether black, white, whatever, anytime you're different, whatever that difference is, it can cause problems. It can cause embarrassment. It can cause shame. It can cause you to want to suffer in silence, unfortunately, which is what a lot of people do. And all of those things are just are tools that the enemy uses to keep us from being what God has called us to be. Because in this, no matter your illness, no matter your situation, schizophrenic, bipolar, or whatever your illness is, God has a plan for your life. He has a plan for you. But if He can keep us so focused or distracted by the negative things that's going on in our life, it's harder for us to be what God has called us to be. I think I was shared before how I was watching this broadcast, and there was this gentleman who didn't have any legs or any arms, but he was going around the country being a witness or being an encouragement to other people. So there's always something that we can do. There's a reason why God has us here on this earth, and we just have to find that, what that reason is. What are some things that keep us from finding out or from walking in the purpose that God has for us, even though we're dealing with a negative situation ourselves? Is how we think. Thoughts, feelings, and behaviors go together. When we get stuck in our negative thinking, and again, negative thinking, bad feelings, we all have them. We are human. We have emotions. So let's be clear about that. The difference is us getting stuck in them. We don't want to get stuck. We don't want to, because one negative thought leads to another. We start comparing, and then we start getting angry, and then we start getting irritable, and then we start thinking that nobody likes us, and everybody's against us, and we just start thinking bad thoughts that don't help us. But when we kind of take a look at, yes, I'm dealing with this negative situation, yes, I'm diagnosed with schizophrenia, yes, I'm diagnosed with bipolar, but in the midst of my diagnosis, I can still be all that God have us to be. And if you need you're listening to me and you need further encouragement, just log on to our website, FaithBased.com, and we have some sister sites on there as well, and you'll get a chance to hear testimonies from people who are living with a negative life situation. And that's the key, living, not just existing. God has come that we might have life and life more abundantly, and not just to exist. So when we talk about psychiatric or mental illnesses or brain illnesses that are characterized by changes in a person's thinking, mood, or behavior, and that is accompanied by significant distress or impairment in functioning. The brain, not the mind, the brain, just like is an organ. And just like any other organ, it can become sick. It can become ill. It can become impaired. So we kind of have to remember that. For some reason, when it comes to mental illnesses, we think that people should be able to snap out of it. When we talk about mental illnesses, we're talking about an illness that impacts a person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We're talking about that there are changes that have happened in the brain. I think I was sharing before I got cut off, was talking about depression. A lot of times people will say, oh, I'm just depressed. And we use that term a lot. And when you say depressed, that's totally different than being clinically depressed. When you say depressed, a lot of times you're sad, you're depressed, if you will, in response to a situation. But when you're clinically depressed, you could be, have $1 million, just have gotten married or just gotten engaged, and still feel that pit. You can still feel depressed. You can still have those negative thoughts. You can still feel it's beyond sadness. We use this term, we say depression, clinical depression hurts, and it does, because you just don't feel like doing anything. It impacts your thoughts, it impacts your family. But again, I don't want to talk about depression today because the focus is on recovery, and that recovery is possible. Now, we know that anytime, and think about it yourself, anytime you're not feeling well physically, it can have an impact, a spiritual impact, right? Because if you don't feel well, then you start feeling, yucky, you start feeling sad. So yes, there is an impact, and because of that impact, many times people think, they want to keep saying it's demonic. And what we're talking about two different things. Because if you're talking about something that's spiritually demonic, then you should be able to pray, and the person should not be demonically inclined anymore. And that's something I say to people, oh, I think it's just demonic. Well, then you go pray and cast the demon out. That's real simple. But it's not simple. We're not talking about that. We're talking about severe and persistent mental illness, such as severe depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, etc., that impacts a person's or causes changes in the way a person thinks, feels, and behaves across the board. When you're clinically depressed, you don't feel like it, you don't think about it, you don't even feel like getting out of bed. You can stay in bed for days and not even, you stay in bed for days. You can forget about the things that you used to like doing, you no longer want to do. I always use this phrase and say, keep in mind the word change. When you're dealing with mental illnesses, severe and persistent mental illness, the word is change. Change the way you're thinking, change the way you're feeling, changes the way you're behaving, that lasts for over a long period of time. So, I wanted to say that. So what causes mental illnesses? Now, we know from a spiritual perspective that when Adam and Eve disobeyed, that sin entered the world, and with sin came illnesses and all types of diseases, right? One of the illness and diseases category, when we look at mental illnesses or brain illnesses that we call it. Now, what causes a brain illness? It really depends. There's no one exact cause, but we know that there's a combination. And I'm reading from the Surgeon General's report in 1999, if you're interested. And again, you can go on our website and see that. It says, while the exact causes of many mental disorders is still unknown, according to published reports, it is likely that biological, psychological, and social and cultural factors all work together to shape the development of many diseases, to include mental illnesses. Genetics, changes in brain chemicals, infections, psychological issues, the environment, life events, personality, and developmental factors are some of the major theories associated with the causes of many mental illnesses. And again, it really depends on the illness. There's a big book called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual number 5 that lists all the diagnoses, and in order to be categorized or diagnosed with a particular diagnosis, you've had to have a certain amount of symptoms that has lasted for a certain period of time. Now, depending on the illness, for example, we can say PTSD was triggered by trauma. Maybe, maybe not, but that's one thing we can say. There are certain infectious disease that can cause changes in the brain. Traumatic brain injuries, right, where a person has had a traumatic brain injury can cause changes in the brain. A person can be more aggressive. They can become hallucinating, etc., etc. When we look at depression or bipolar, we know it's more chemical imbalance. So it depends on the category of illness that you're talking about. But there is a cause. The exact cause we can't say for sure. We just know that there are changes that come about in the brain. Now, understand that while sickness and diseases are an everyday occurrence in the world that we live in, total healing is possible through Jesus Christ. So never forget that. Total healing is possible through Jesus Christ. However, the timing of the healing, how he chooses to do it, is totally up to him. And when you rest in that, first of all, like I was saying before, you got to understand who Jesus Christ is. When you talk about God, it could be a whole lot of things. But we're talking about Jesus Christ, God manifested in the flesh, the one who died on the cross and rose again for our sins so that we might have life, so that we might have like a fullness of life, not just exist. Thinks very highly of us, right? He would have died if it was just you or just me. But he chose to do that. Why? To redeem us back to himself so that we can have victory over illness and diseases. But keep in mind, even when Jesus was here on earth, as long as he was here, everybody didn't get sick. Everybody didn't get healed. There were still diseases. There were still bad things happening, even with Jesus walking here on earth. So you want to kind of keep that in mind. Some of us, we may not receive our healing in this body. We may have to wait until we get to the other one. And I know that seems like, I don't want to do that. And I get it. I understand that. But as the key is, there are two sides. This side is the flesh side. This side is the Lord's side, if I can say it like that. On the flesh side, of course, we have our emotions and we have our feelings, which is fine. The thing is when our emotions and feelings get to a point where it causes us to begin to doubt and trust God, then now we are walking in the flesh and now we're on the enemy side. Right? When we begin to doubt that God loves us, when we begin to try to do things in our flesh, like I was saying before, it's pride that will keep us from not taking the medications when we need it. Because God has provided a remedy. He's provided grace for us. He's given us the ability to overcome what we're dealing with. It's pride that keeps us from admitting that we need help. It's pride that keeps us from admitting that we're having struggles in our emotions, right? And we think we're doing good. It's nothing but a trick of the enemy. That's a thought to keep us carrying this weight by ourselves. So you carrying the weight around by yourselves. You got all the weight of the world on your shoulder, and you think you're doing good. And you think that's God's work, and you think and you're proud of that. That's just a trick of the enemy, because the enemy desires to kill, steal, and destroy. And if he can kill, steal, and destroy you through the weapon of worry, through the weapon of not having enough, through the weapons, if you will, of just being so pride and boastful that you can't ask for help, then so be it. So again, keep that in mind. God is saying, come to me. Come to me, right? Bring your cares, your concerns to me. I don't want to take medications, your thoughts, your hurts, etc., etc. Bring those things to him. That's okay. Because as you bring those things to him, he will give you a plan. He will give you the ability or the grace to deal with whatever you're dealing with. He'll show you, okay, these are my triggers. These are things I need to work on. These are things I shouldn't do or whatever. But he'll give you a plan, but you have to ask him. Pride will keep us from not asking God for help. Pride will keep us from, trying to do everything in our flesh. Because when you do things in your flesh, eventually it's going to turn out not so good for us. So again, keep that in mind. Now, let me keep going. Let me read this. Isaiah 53:5. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Isaiah 53:5. And the thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and destroy. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. St. John 10:10. And Jesus Christ said these things even though he knew you would get sick, that I would get sick. He's still saying that the reason why he came, and this is what his desire is. So whatever you're going through, in the midst of the voices, in the midst of your anxiety, in the midst of your depression, in the midst of your sadness, whatever it is, you have to understand that there is a way of escape. God has made a way of escape, a plan, a strategy that He has for you. The thing is, we just can't get so stuck on this side that all we focus on is what's going on in our lives, that we don't move to this side where we begin to seek the Lord for that plan and begin to trust Him. So again, when we talk about, I'm talking about a faith-based recovery mindset. The healing power of Jesus Christ is able to bring about a miracle and deliverance in our lives. Remember that. However, every response from God is always subject to His word, His will, and His timing, not ours, right? So in the midst of believing God for a miracle, let us not disregard the concept of recovery or the grace that He has given to us to succeed while we are waiting. In the midst of what we're going through, there is a grace. Grace, what is grace? Ability. There's an ability to make it, to thrive, to succeed in the midst of whatever else that we're going through. But we can't see it because of how we're thinking. We can't see it because we're busy comparing. We can't see it or receive it because we're so busy, just rehearsing every negative thing that has happened to us, right? Again, as I said before, we all have those moments. But we can't let those moments turn into hours, and those hours turn into days, and before you know it, those days have turned into months, and those months have turned into years. And before we know it, we're getting older, time has passed. As I said before, today is August the 4th, 2018. August the 4th, 2018 will never come again. So we have to, now is the time. Now is the appointed time. No matter what you're dealing with, now is the appointed time for you to kind of find out what the plan that God has for your life, what's the strategy that He has for you to overcome the illness or situation that you're dealing with. And when I mean overcome, recovery, when we talk about, especially when we talk about severe and persistent mental illness, doesn't mean that, boom, I'm healed. Doesn't mean I go in, I get a shot, and I feel much better, or I'm cured. That's not what it means. It means learning to live your life to the fullest in the midst of what you're going through. And that's the key. When we talk about a faith-based recovery mindset, we're talking about learning to trust God, learning to rest, learning to avail yourself to the grace or the ability that God has for you in the midst of what you're going through, and not letting anything get in the way of that. Now, recovery is a process that can be facilitated by many factors, to include a belief in your ability to get better, support, systems, medications, and faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. It's not one or the other. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can still take medications, you can still have, which means you still have faith. And all that people